What happens when Will Smith walks onto the set of The View expecting a calm conversation about growth, public mistakes, and moving forward, only for the discussion to spiral into one of the most uncomfortable live TV clashes the audience has seen in years? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The cameras roll back from commercial break, and the audience is already cheering as Will Smith walks out smiling, waving to the crowd, trying to keep things light. The hosts stand to greet him. Whoopi Goldberg hugs him first while Joy Behar gives him a playful smile from across the table. "Welcome back," Whoopi says as everyone settles in. "It's been a minute." Will laughs. "Yeah, a little bit." The audience chuckles softly. Sunny Hostin leans forward. "People have been waiting for this conversation." Will nods carefully. "I know." At first, the interview moves smoothly. They talk about his new project, about time away from Hollywood, about how public pressure changes a person. Will sounds relaxed but measured, choosing his words carefully. He says, "I've spent the last few years really learning how to sit with consequences. Not run from them. Not fight them. Just understand them." The audience applauds. Whoopi nods. "That's hard to do publicly." "It is," Will answers. "Because everybody thinks they know your whole life from one moment." There's a brief silence at the table. Joy jumps in first. "Well, sometimes one moment changes how people see you forever." The audience reacts with a mix of murmurs and nervous laughter. Will smiles politely. "That can happen." Joy continues. "I mean, let's not dance around it. The Oscars moment became bigger than your entire career for a lot of people." The room tightens slightly. Will keeps his composure. "I understand that." Sunny speaks carefully. "Did it frustrate you that people didn't seem interested in your apology afterward?" Will pauses before answering. "No. I think when you make a mistake publicly, you don't get to decide how long people stay angry." Whoopi nods approvingly. "That's fair. But Joy isn't done. Some people still think you never fully explained yourself." Will shifts in his chair slightly. "I explained as much as I could explain." "But did you?" Joy presses. "Because from the outside, it looked like ego." A few audience members gasp softly. Will's smile fades just a little. "You're entitled to feel that way," he says calmly. Joy shrugs. "I'm saying what a lot of viewers think." Whoopi lightly raises a hand. "All right, let him answer." Will looks toward Joy directly now. "I think sometimes people reduce complicated human moments into internet headlines." Sunny steps in before the tension grows further. "Do you feel misunderstood?" "Absolutely," Will says immediately. "But that doesn't mean I think I'm innocent." The audience claps again. For a moment, the conversation steadies. Alyssa Farah Griffin asks about mental health and public pressure. Will speaks more openly. "There's a dangerous thing that happens when millions of people stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a symbol." Whoopi nods slowly. "That's true. You become either the villain or the hero," Will continues. "Nobody allows room for humanity anymore." Joy crosses her arms slightly. "But celebrities also benefit from that system when it works in their favor." The audience reacts again. Will glances toward her. "Of course. I'm not pretending otherwise." "So where's the accountability line?" Joy asks. "There has to be accountability," Will says. "But accountability isn't saying I was going through something," Joy fires back. "Everybody's going through something." A louder reaction comes from the crowd now. Whoopi looks sideways at Joy. "Okay. No, because I think this matters," Joy says. "People watched that and saw somebody with power lose control and then still stay one of the biggest stars in the world." Will's jaw tightens slightly. "I hear you," he says quietly. Joy leans forward. "Do you?" Sunny quickly jumps in. "I think what Joy's asking is whether fame protects celebrities from consequences." Will nods slowly. "Sometimes it does." "And did it protect you?" Joy asks immediately. The audience lets out an audible, "Oh." Will exhales through his nose before answering. "I lost projects. I lost opportunities. I lost peace for a while. But you're still here," Joy says. The room goes quiet. Will stares at her for a second longer than before. "Yes," he says carefully. "I'm still here." Whoopi senses the shift immediately. "And people can rebuild," she says firmly. "That's part of life." Joy shrugs. "Some people don't get the luxury of rebuilding publicly." Will finally leans back in his chair, his expression changing from calm to visibly irritated for the first time. He says slowly, "There's something interesting happening right now." Joy raises an eyebrow. "What's that?" "You keep framing me like I'm asking for sympathy." "I'm asking questions," Joy replies. No, Will says. You're making conclusions and calling them questions. The audience reacts loudly. Whoopi immediately steps in. All right, let's everybody breathe for a second. But Joy keeps going. Well, if the conclusion bothers you, maybe it's because there's truth in it. A collective gasp spreads through the studio. Will lets out a short laugh, not amused, more disbelief. There it is, he says quietly. Sunny looks uncomfortable now. Alyssa shifts in her seat. Whoopi turns toward Joy. Let him talk. Will looks directly at Whoopi for a moment before turning back to Joy. I came here knowing we'd discuss difficult things. That's fair. I expected that. Joy nods. Good. But there's a difference between discussion and disrespect. The audience applauds loudly. Joy shakes her head immediately. Nobody's disrespecting you. Will responds faster this time. You don't get to decide that for me. The crowd gets louder. Whoopi raises her voice slightly. Okay, hold on. But the energy has already changed completely. Will sits forward now, elbows near his knees. I've apologized publicly. I've talked about mistakes publicly. I've spent years getting torn apart publicly. And that's fine. I earned criticism. He pauses. But what I'm not going to do is sit here and pretend people enjoy accountability more than they enjoy humiliation. The audience erupts into applause. Joy opens her mouth to respond, but several audience members clap even louder over her. Whoopi looks toward the crowd. All right. Will continues, voice sharper now. Because there are people who don't want growth. They want punishment forever. Those are different things. Sunny nods slowly, clearly trying to calm the atmosphere. I think that's an important distinction. Joy shakes her head. Except public trust matters. It does, Will agrees immediately. And people lost trust in you. I know that. Then why sound angry about people still questioning you? Will stares at the table for a second before looking back up. Because questioning somebody and provoking somebody aren't always the same thing. The audience reacts again. Whoopi tries steering the conversation elsewhere. Let's talk about what you learned during the time away. But Joy interrupts. No, because now I'm curious. Are you saying I'm provoking you? Will gives a tight smile. I think you know exactly what you're doing. The crowd explodes again. Joy laughs in disbelief. Oh, please. No, Will says firmly now. Seriously. I've sat through tough interviews before. This feels different. Because I'm not treating you delicately? Joy shoots back. Will's expression hardens. I don't need delicate. I need honest. Joy immediately responds, this is honest. No, Will says louder than before. This is performative. The audience gasps loudly. Whoopi leans forward quickly. Okay. Joy throws her hands up. Performative? On a talk show? Yes, Will says. Because every answer I give, you twist into another accusation. Sunny jumps in fast. I think everybody's emotions are rising right now. Will doesn't take his eyes off Joy. You asked if I learned from my mistakes. I did. But I also learned people make money keeping pain alive. The audience reacts with a mixture of applause and stunned silence. Joy shakes her head again. Now you're making yourself the victim. That's the moment the room completely changes. Will sits upright instantly. I did not say that. Yes, you did. No, Will says sharply. I said there's a difference between accountability and obsession. Whoopi reaches over the table slightly. All right, we're going to take a breath because this is getting heated. But we'll keep speaking. And honestly, I'm tired of people pretending celebrities stop being human because they messed up publicly. Joy fires back immediately. And I'm tired of celebrities wanting endless redemption tours. The audience explodes again as the camera cuts briefly toward stunned faces in the crowd. Will shakes his head slowly, clearly frustrated now. See, that right there. You already decided who I am before I sat down. And right as Whoopi opens her mouth to cut to commercial, the tension at the table becomes impossible to ignore. The audience is still buzzing when the cameras return from commercial. Nobody at the table is smiling now. Whoopi looks directly into the camera first. Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Will Smith. The applause comes in, but it's scattered this time. Uneasy. Will sits with his hands clasped together, jaw tight, trying to regain composure. Joy leans back in her chair, expression unreadable. Whoopi speaks carefully. Live television gets emotional sometimes. That's what happens when people care about what they're talking about. Will nods once. Absolutely. Joy gives a short shrug. Nobody's afraid of disagreement here. Sunny quickly jumps in before the tension spikes again. I think viewers appreciate honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Will glances toward Sunny and nods. I agree. For a few seconds, the conversation steadies. Alyssa tries changing direction. One thing I've wondered is whether fame makes healing harder, because everybody expects instant perfection from public figures. Will exhale softly. That's a huge part of it. He looks toward the audience now instead of the hosts. You make one mistake in front of the whole world, and suddenly people think they own your humanity forever. A few audience members clap. But healing doesn't happen on social media timelines, he continues. Real growth is ugly. It's embarrassing sometimes. Joy immediately cuts in again. But some people would argue that ordinary people don't get the luxury of public redemption arcs. The audience groans quietly, already sensing where this is going. Will closes his eyes briefly before answering. Joy, you keep saying luxury like the last few years were a vacation. Well, compared to what regular people face. Whoopi interrupts quickly. Okay, but pain isn't a competition. Exactly, Will says, turning toward her. Thank you. Joy folds her arms. I'm not minimizing pain. I'm questioning whether celebrities always center themselves in conversations about consequences. Will gives a slow nod. That's fair to question. The room quiets slightly. But what's not fair, he continues, is assuming every public apology is manipulation. Sunny leans forward. Do you think people stopped believing sincerity altogether? Yes, Will answers immediately. Especially online. The audience applauds again. People don't want context anymore, Will says. Everything becomes teams. Either you're evil forever or innocent forever. Joy replies, or maybe people are just exhausted with wealthy celebrities asking for understanding. A louder reaction breaks out from the crowd. Will looks at her directly again. You keep reducing me to wealthy celebrity every time the conversation gets human. Joy shakes her head. Because power matters. Of course power matters. And influence matters. Yes. And privilege matters. Yes, Will says louder. I have never denied any of that. The audience claps hard at that response. Will continues before Joy can jump back in. But privilege doesn't erase emotion. It doesn't erase regret. It doesn't erase damage. Whoopi nods slowly. People forget famous folks still wake up with the same emotions everybody else has. Joy laughs lightly under her breath. That sounds nice, but most people watching at home aren't flying private to therapy retreats. The audience reacts instantly with a mix of laughter and discomfort. Will stares at her. There's the sarcasm again. It's realism, Joy says. No, Will replies calmly but firmly. It's contempt. The room goes silent. Whoopi immediately raises her hand. Okay, but Joy jumps in. Contempt? Because I'm asking hard questions. Will leans forward. No, because every answer I give seems to annoy you more. Sunny quietly says, I do think the conversation feels personal now. Joy turns toward Sunny. It's not personal. Will responds instantly. Then why does it sound personal? A few audience members clap loudly. Joy's voice sharpens slightly. Because I don't think celebrities should control how they're perceived after public behavior. Will nods once. And I agree with you. Joy pauses for a second, almost caught off guard. But there's a difference, Will continues, between criticism and deciding somebody is permanently beyond growth. Joy looks at him carefully. Did anyone say you're beyond growth? Will gives a small laugh. Come on. No, seriously, Joy says. Did I say that? You don't have to say it directly, Will replies. People communicate in tone too. The audience lets out another collective reaction. Whoopi steps in again. This is why these conversations get tricky. Everybody hears intention differently. But the tension keeps building. Will looks out toward the audience again. I knew this interview would bring tough conversations. I respect that. But there's a point where it stops being discussion and starts becoming entertainment built around somebody's worst moment. Joy responds immediately. Well, your worst moment happened on live television. And I own that, Will fires back. The audience applauds loudly. For years now, Will continues. Every interview, every headline, every appearance. I've owned it. Joy tilts her head slightly. And yet you still sound angry people remember it. Will's expression hardens again. Because I'm human. The audience erupts with applause. Whoopi points toward the crowd. There you go. But Joy doesn't back down. People are human when they get slapped too. A loud gasp fills the studio. Even Sunny's eyes widen. Will goes completely still. The room suddenly feels much colder. Whoopi immediately says, Joy. No, Joy says. We're going to be honest or not. We'll speak slowly now, voice controlled but clearly simmering underneath. You think I forgot that? Joy shrugs lightly. I think sometimes celebrities focus more on how backlash affected them than how their actions affected others. Will nods once. That's a valid point. The audience quiets, surprised by the calmer response. But what you keep missing, he says, is that I've spent years saying exactly that. Joy opens her hands. Then why be defensive? Because there's a difference between accountability and being baited. The crowd reacts immediately. Joy laughs again. Nobody's baiting you. Will leans back in his chair and shakes his head slowly. You know what's interesting? Whoopi exhales softly like she already knows trouble is coming. What? Joy asks. Will looks around the table. Everybody here has challenged me today. Sunny challenged me. Alyssa challenged me. Even Whoopi challenged me. Whoopi nods carefully. But your questions don't sound like curiosity, Will says to Joy. They sound like you already decided what the ending of the conversation should be. The audience applauds loudly again. Joy's expression changes now too. Less playful. More irritated. So because I'm not applauding your answers, I'm unfair? No, Will says immediately. Because you keep reframing everything into guilt no matter what I say. Sunny tries stepping in again. I think what Will's saying is he feels there's no room for nuance in the conversation. Joy responds without looking away from Will. Nuance is what powerful people ask for when consequences finally arrive. The audience explodes with reactions. Whoopi puts both hands up. Okay, all right. But Will cuts in this time. No, let's stay there. The room quiets instantly. Will's voice lowers. You know what bothers me most? Joy crosses her arms. Tell me. The idea that people aren't allowed to become better after failing publicly. Joy shakes her head. Nobody said that. You imply it constantly. No, Joy fires back. I'm saying fame gives people second chances most regular folks never get. Will nods sharply. And maybe that's a conversation about society. But don't turn me into a symbol for everything wrong with fame because it's convenient television. The audience erupts again. Whoopi looks toward the producers offstage for a split second. Sunny notices it too. Will continues, emotions rising more openly now. You want to know what the hardest part has been? Nobody interrupts this time. It's walking into rooms knowing people already decided whether I deserve grace before I even speak. The audience grows quieter. Will looks genuinely emotional now, but he's still holding himself together. And honestly, he says, I accepted that. What I didn't expect was how much people enjoy keeping somebody trapped in one moment forever. Joy replies immediately. Or maybe people just don't trust rehearsed redemption. That line hits the room hard. Will lets out a frustrated laugh and shakes his head again. There it is again. What? You keep calling every attempt at accountability fake. Joy leans in slightly. Maybe because Hollywood trains people to apologize publicly. Will's tone sharpens instantly. And television doesn't train people to provoke publicly? The audience explodes. Whoopi loudly says, All right. But now both of them are talking over each other. Joy says, You came here knowing what this show is. Will responds, I came here expecting conversation, not interrogation. Joy throws her hands up. Those are not the same thing. They are when somebody's already convicted in your mind. The audience gasps loudly as several people begin clapping at once. Sunny tries calming things down. Okay, let's lower the temperature. But Will is fully fired up now. You keep talking like I'm asking people to forget what happened. I never asked for that. Not once. Joy replies instantly. Then stop acting shocked people still judge you for it. Will points lightly toward the table. I'm not shocked. I'm exhausted. The room falls quiet again. And for the first time all interview, even Joy doesn't immediately respond. The silence hangs over the table for several long seconds. Even the audience seems unsure whether to clap or stay quiet. Will sits back in his chair, breathing slowly, trying to pull himself together. Joy looks down at her cards briefly before looking back up again. Whoopi finally breaks the tension. Look, she says carefully. This is why these conversations matter. People have strong feelings. Sunny nods. And honestly, viewers at home probably see pieces of themselves in both sides right now. Will gives a small nod. I can understand that. Joy adjusts in her chair. Good, because criticism comes with public life. Will looks at her calmly now, but the frustration is still visible. I've never said otherwise. Then why does every difficult question feel like disrespect to you? The audience reacts immediately again. Will shakes his head. See, that's not what I said. Isn't it? Joy asks. No, Will replies firmly. I said there's a difference between accountability and enjoying punishment. Whoopi quickly jumps in. And people define those things differently. But that's exactly the issue, Will says. Nobody wants to admit there's an emotional economy around outrage now. Sunny leans forward. Explain what you mean by that. Will gestures lightly with his hands as he speaks. People profit from outrage. Networks profit from outrage. Social media profits from outrage. Audiences get emotionally attached to outrage. The crowd murmurs in agreement. And once somebody becomes the villain of the week, Will continues. Keeping them there becomes valuable. Joy responds instantly. Or maybe audiences are tired of celebrity damage control. Will laughs softly again, clearly frustrated. You see? That right there. What? Joy asks. You hear everything through the lens of celebrity manipulation. Joy shrugs. Because Hollywood has earned skepticism. The audience claps loudly at that. Will nods once. Fair. That answer catches the table off guard. But skepticism isn't the same thing as refusing to believe growth exists. Sunny says quietly, that's an important distinction. Joy folds her arms again. Growth is private. Public image management is different. Will leans toward her slightly. You really believe none of this can be sincere? Joy pauses. I believe sincerity and strategy can exist together. The audience reacts with a few approving claps. Will nods slowly. That's probably true. For a second, the tension eases just a little. Then Joy says, but people also remember how quickly celebrities ask for forgiveness once consequences arrive. The crowd lets out another collective, oh. Will's eyes narrow slightly. And regular people don't. Joy smiles faintly. Regular people don't usually have publicists. The audience laughs loudly. Even Whoopi chuckles for a second before realizing the mood is turning again. Will smiles too, but it's tight. You know what's funny? What? Joy asks. You keep talking about Hollywood like I'm the CEO of it. The audience laughs lightly. No, Joy says. I'm talking about celebrity culture. But you keep making it personal. Because you're sitting here. Will leans back again, shaking his head. And this is what I mean. No matter what I say, the conversation keeps circling back to the assumption that none of my emotions can possibly be real. Sunny steps in carefully. I don't think Joy's saying your emotions aren't real. Joy immediately responds. No, I'm saying public figures know how to perform emotion extremely well. The audience gasps again. Will stares at her. Wow. Whoopi immediately raises her voice slightly. Okay. No, Will says, holding a hand up gently. Let's stay honest. Joy looks directly at him now. You're an actor, Will. And people are going to question authenticity sometimes. Will lets out another disbelieving laugh. So because I'm an actor, I can't genuinely feel regret? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you implied. The audience claps loudly again. Joy shakes her head. You keep hearing attack where there's critique. Will's tone sharpens instantly. And you keep disguising attack as critique. The room erupts. Whoopi leans forward fast. All right, both of you. But Joy cuts in over her. You don't get to decide my intentions. Will fires back immediately. And you don't get to decide mine either. The audience roars. Sunny puts both hands up. Okay. Alyssa finally jumps in after staying quiet for several minutes. I actually think this is bigger than just Will, she says. I think the public has become incredibly unforgiving in general. Several audience members applaud. Alyssa continues, people say they want accountability, but sometimes it feels like they want permanent condemnation. Joy turns toward her. Consequences are not condemnation. No, Alyssa says calmly, but endless punishment can become that. Whoopi nods slowly. That's true. Joy looks unconvinced. Will speaks again before the moment settles. And there's another thing nobody wants to say. The audience quiets immediately. When people hate you publicly, he says, there's pressure to keep proving you feel bad enough forever. Sunny nods slowly. That's interesting. Will continues. No apology ever feels sufficient because outrage has become emotional entertainment. Joy laughs lightly again. There's the victim language. The audience gasps louder than before. Will's face changes instantly. I'm sorry. Joy shrugs. You keep framing yourself as somebody being targeted by the system. Will leans forward sharply now. No, I'm describing the system. You're describing your experience in it. Because I lived it. And millions of regular people live consequences every day without sympathy. Will raises his voice for the first time since returning from commercial. Why do you keep acting like empathy is limited? The audience explodes into applause. Joy starts responding immediately, but Will keeps going. That's the problem now. Everybody acts like giving somebody grace means excusing behavior. Whoopi points toward him slightly. That's a real point. But accountability matters too, Joy insists. I know accountability matters. Will says loudly. The audience erupts again. For a moment, nobody at the table speaks. Will realizes how loud he got and exhales hard, leaning back again. See, Joy says quietly, this is what people saw before. The room goes dead silent. Sunny's eyes widen immediately. Whoopi turns sharply toward Joy. Okay now, but the damage is already done. Will stares at Joy in disbelief. That's what you wanted to do. Joy looks back at him evenly. I'm saying people remember anger. Will shakes his head slowly. No, you wanted a reaction. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. The audience starts clapping loudly again, some people shouting. Whoopi tries regaining control. Everybody calm down. But Will is no longer hiding how upset he is. You've been pushing this entire interview. Joy responds instantly. And you've been defensive this entire interview. Because every answer I give gets turned into another accusation. Because you keep avoiding the bigger point. What bigger point? Will fires back. That fame protects people. Will throws his hands outward. And what do you want me to do about that personally? The audience erupts. Joy says, acknowledge it. I have. No, you acknowledge it and then pivot back to your pain. Will laughs sharply in disbelief. So now I'm not allowed to talk about my own experience? You're allowed, Joy replies, but viewers are allowed to question sincerity. Will points toward the audience. And viewers are also smart enough to recognize when somebody's trying to provoke a moment. The crowd explodes again. Whoopi looks visibly stressed now. Okay, we are not doing this. But Joy keeps going. You think I'm provoking because I'm not giving you a redemption edit. Will immediately responds. I think you decided before I walked out here that nothing I said would matter. Joy leans in closer. Maybe because actions matter more than speeches. Will's expression hardens again. And maybe because television rewards conflict more than understanding. The audience reacts loudly. Whoopi finally slaps the table lightly. Enough. That gets everybody quiet for a second. Whoopi looks at both of them seriously. We can disagree without trying to destroy each other. The audience applauds loudly. Will nods slowly, still visibly angry. Joy stays quiet for the first time in several minutes. Whoopi continues. This conversation started about mistakes, accountability, growth, and public judgment. And now it's turning into people trying to win. Sunny nods immediately. That's true. Whoopi turns toward Will. Nobody here is saying people can't grow. Then she looks toward Joy. And nobody here is saying criticism isn't fair. The tension cools slightly. But then Joy quietly says one more thing. I still think powerful people expect softer treatment than everybody else. Will closes his eyes briefly. Then he opens them and looks directly at her. And I think some people confuse cruelty with honesty. The audience explodes as the show suddenly cuts to another commercial break. When the show returns from the final commercial break, the energy inside the studio feels completely different. The audience applause is hesitant at first, like people are still processing what they just watched. Whoopi looks exhausted but composed as she turns toward the camera. We're back with Will Smith. Will sits quietly, hands folded together now. The anger from earlier hasn't disappeared, but he looks more controlled. More reflective. Joy Behar sits back in her chair silently for a moment while Sunny Hostin glances between both of them carefully. Whoopi breaks the silence first. I think everybody took a breath during the break. A few audience members laugh nervously. Will nods once. Probably needed to. Joy gives a small shrug. Fair enough. For the first time in almost half an hour, the tension eases slightly. Whoopi turns toward Will. I want to ask you something directly before we wrap this up. Okay. What do you want people to understand about you now? The room grows quiet again. Will takes a long pause before answering. That I'm still a work in progress. The audience applauds softly. I think sometimes people hear public figures talk about growth and assume it's branding, he continues. But the truth is growth is painful, especially when your worst moments are attached to your name forever. Sunny nods slowly. Will looks toward the audience now. I'm not asking people to forget anything. I'm not asking people to excuse anything. I just think there has to be room for human beings to evolve. The crowd applauds louder this time. Joy finally speaks again, calmer than before. And I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Will glances toward her. But the audience laughs awkwardly. Joy exhales. But public trust takes time. Will nods immediately. I agree. And some viewers still feel angry. I understand that too. The atmosphere softens slightly as both stop interrupting each other for the first time all interview. Whoopi leans back with relief visible on her face. See? This is conversation. The audience applauds again. Alyssa smiles lightly. I think people at home probably wanted this moment 20 minutes ago. That gets genuine laughter from the crowd, including Will himself. Even Joy cracks a smile. Sunny then asks one final question. Do you regret coming here today? The audience reacts immediately. Will pauses. Then he smiles faintly. No. That surprises the crowd. No. Sunny repeats. Will shakes his head. No. Because uncomfortable conversations are still necessary conversations. Whoopi nods approvingly. Will continues. I'd rather sit here and have real disagreement than fake politeness. The audience applauds loudly. Then Will looks toward Joy directly. And for what it's worth, I know you weren't trying to protect my feelings. The audience laughs nervously again. Joy smirks. Definitely not. Even Whoopi laughs at that. But Will says, I do think sometimes media forgets there are actual people underneath public mistakes. Joy studies him for a second before answering. And I think sometimes celebrities forget audiences don't owe them forgiveness. Will nods slowly. That's fair. The room quiets again. Whoopi smiles slightly. Now that sounds more productive. As the segment begins winding down, the audience applause becomes warmer. Less divided. Still tense, but calmer. Whoopi turns to camera again. One thing we always try to do here is have honest conversations, even when they get uncomfortable. Joy quietly adds, sometimes especially when they get uncomfortable. Will chuckles softly at that. The producer countdown can almost be felt as the table begins wrapping up. Sunny thanks Will for staying through the difficult discussion. Alyssa says viewers will probably debate this interview for days. That's guaranteed, Joy mutters under her breath, getting another laugh from the audience. Then Whoopi asks the final question. What happens after this for you? Will pauses one last time. I go home, he says honestly. I keep working on myself. I keep living. That's really all any person can do. The audience applauds loudly. And just before the cameras pull wide for the ending shot, Whoopi reaches across the table and lightly taps Will's arm. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just human. The show ends. But online, the conversation explodes almost immediately. Clips of the argument between Will and Joy flood social media within minutes. Hashtags connected to the view begin trending before the episode even finishes airing on the West Coast. Some viewers defend Will Smith passionately. Posts appear everywhere saying he stayed calm longer than most people would have. Others praise him for openly talking about shame, growth, and public judgment. One viral post reads, Will Smith was right. People don't want accountability anymore. They want permanent punishment. Another says, Joy Behar asked the questions a lot of people are still thinking. The internet immediately splits into sides. Some viewers accuse Joy of pushing too hard and trying to provoke a reaction for television. Others argue she refused to let a celebrity control the narrative. Several clips go viral individually. One of the biggest clips online becomes the moment Will says, You keep disguising attack as critique. Another massive clip spreads when Joy tells him, People are human when they get slapped too. Reaction channels begin posting breakdown videos within hours. Entertainment websites publish headlines calling it one of the most tense interviews in recent talk show history. Some commentators praise Whoopi Goldberg for trying to keep the conversation balanced, while others say even she looked shocked by how heated things became. Backstage reports start circulating online too. According to audience members posting on social media afterward, the room felt uncomfortable, electric, and completely unpredictable. One audience member writes, You could literally feel the tension during commercial breaks. Another posts, Nobody in the audience knew whose side to clap for anymore. Clips filmed outside the studio show fans arguing about the interview before the show is even fully uploaded online. The next morning, entertainment shows replay the confrontation repeatedly. Panel discussions debate whether Joy crossed a line or whether she simply refused to soften difficult questions for a major celebrity. Some hosts defend her aggressively. Others say the interview stopped being productive once the discussion became personal. Meanwhile, Will Smith trends across every major platform again. Not because of a movie, not because of an award, because of another emotional public moment people can't stop talking about. By the following day, multiple celebrities subtly weigh in online without directly naming names. Some post about grace. Others post about accountability. Everyone seems to interpret the interview differently. And that becomes the biggest takeaway from the entire clash. Nobody fully agrees on who was right. Some people see a man trying to move forward while being permanently defined by one mistake. Others see a powerful celebrity frustrated that public opinion didn't move on fast enough. But almost everybody agrees on one thing. It felt real. Not polished. Not scripted. Not safe. Just messy, emotional live television where nobody completely won. And honestly, that's exactly why millions of people kept watching. Make sure to share your opinion in the comments. Was Will Smith treated unfairly, or was Joy Behar right to press harder? And don't forget to subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show. Stories, tense live TV moments, and celebrity clashes everyone's talking about.